I watched through the frosted window as my mother placed the last ornament on the Christmas tree, a delicate glass angel that had been in our family for 3 generations. My sister Emma squealed with delight as Dad lifted her to place the star on top. They were all there: Mom, Dad, Emma, and even Grandma Joan, who'd flown in from Arizona specifically for the holidays. The living room glowed with warmth, the fireplace crackling. Stockings hung with care above the mantel. 5 stockings. I counted them twice, my breath fogging the glass. 5 stockings for a family of 6. Mine wasn't there. I stood in the December cold, my school backpack still on my shoulders, having walked home from the bus stop like I did every day. I'd been at school. It was December 23rd, the last day before winter break. I'd texted Mom that morning to remind her I had late band practice and wouldn't be home until 6. She'd read the message, I'd seen the blue check marks, but hadn't responded. Now it was 6:47 p.m., and through that window I could see they'd already had dinner. The empty plates were still on the table, remnants of what looked like Mom's famous honey-glazed ham. The same ham she made every Christmas Eve, as Emma called it. My stomach growled. I'd skipped lunch to save money, putting my meal card funds toward a present I'd bought for Emma, a set of art supplies she'd been wanting. I tried the front door, locked. I rang the doorbell, nothing. I rang it again, holding it longer this time. Through the window, I could see them laughing at something on TV. A Christmas movie, probably. The volume must have been turned up. I pulled out my phone and called Mom. Inside, I watched her glance at her phone on the coffee table, see my name on the screen, and deliberately turn it face down before reaching for her wine glass. My hands were shaking now, and not just from the cold. I'd lived in this house for 17 years. I'd eaten at that table thousands of times. My room was on the second floor, third window from the left. I could see my curtains from here, the blue ones I'd picked out when I was 12. I walked around to the back door, my shoes crunching through the thin layer of snow on the walkway, also locked. I knocked louder this time, my knuckles stinging against the wood. "Mom, Dad, it's me, it's Lily!" The kitchen was empty, but I could hear Christmas music playing from the living room. Bing Crosby dreaming of a white Christmas. I called Dad. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. I called Emma. She was 14 now, old enough to answer her phone, old enough to remember she had a sister. It didn't even ring. She'd silenced my calls 23 minutes. I stood in the backyard for 23 minutes, calling, texting, begging. My fingers were numb. My nose was running. And inside, through the windows of my own home, my family decorated cookies and sang carols and existed in a world where I simply wasn't. That's when I understood. They hadn't forgotten me. This was a choice. I pulled my coat tighter and walked back to the front of the house. The decorations mocked me. The wreath on the door, the icicle lights Dad and I used to hang together, the inflatable snowman Emma had begged for 3 years ago. I'd helped her set it up, held the stakes while she hammered them into the frozen ground. My phone buzzed. For a desperate second, I thought it was Mom. It was a notification from Instagram. Emma had posted a photo. The caption read, "Perfect family Christmas with my favorite people." In the picture, all 5 of them were wearing matching Christmas pajamas. Matching pajamas I'd never seen before, never been asked about, never been bought. They'd planned this. They'd gone shopping together, picked out a set for everyone, and deliberately excluded me. I counted 5 sets of pajamas, 5 stockings, 5 plates at dinner. And then I saw it in the background of Emma's photo, in the corner of the living room, behind the couch. A pile of wrapped presents. I zoomed in. The tags were visible on a few of them. To Emma, love Mom. To Mom, love Dad. To Dad, love Grandma. My present for Emma was in my backpack. I'd wrapped it carefully last night in my room after everyone had gone to bed, using the last of my birthday money. The art supply set had cost $64.99. I'd skipped meals for 2 weeks to afford it. I sat down on the porch steps, my vision blurring. The Christmas lights on the houses up and down our street twinkled cheerfully. Mrs. Patterson across the street had a life-sized nativity scene. The Johnsons next door had synchronized their lights to music. It was a beautiful night, the kind of night when everything felt possible and magic seemed real. But magic wasn't real, and neither, apparently, was I. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for my jeans to soak through from the snow. Long enough for the feeling to leave my toes. Long enough to watch 2 cars drive by, their headlights briefly illuminating me before moving on. The drivers too focused on getting to their own warm homes to notice a girl freezing on a porch. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom, but not a call or a text. She'd posted on Facebook, "Grateful for my beautiful family this Christmas season. Emma, you light up our lives. So blessed." 27 likes already. Mrs. Patterson had commented, "Beautiful family." I stood up. My legs were stiff, my whole body aching with cold. I walked back to the window one more time and looked at them. Mom had her arms around Emma. Dad was pouring eggnog. Grandma Joan was laughing at something, her hand over her mouth the way she always did. They looked happy, complete. I could stay here and freeze, or I could survive. Those were my only options. I started walking. The thing is, this wasn't new. The forgetting or the choosing to forget had been happening for years. I just hadn't wanted to see it. It started when Emma was born. I was 3 years old, too young to remember the before times when I'd been the only child, the center of my parents' universe. But I remembered the after. I remembered Mom coming home from the hospital, her face glowing as she carried a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. I remembered reaching up to see my baby sister and Mom pulling away, telling me to be careful. I was too rough, too loud, too much. Emma cried a lot those first few months. Mom was always tired, always stressed. Dad worked longer hours, and I learned very quickly to be quiet, to be small, to not need things. "Lily, not now," became Mom's most common phrase. "Lily, I'm busy with the baby." "Lily, can't you see I'm exhausted?" "Lily, you're old enough to do that yourself." I was 3, then 4, then and with each passing year I became more invisible. When I was 6, I won a reading competition at school. I'd read more books than any other student in my grade, 47 books in 3 months. The librarian, Mrs. Chen, made a big deal about it, gave me a certificate and a gift card to the bookstore. I ran home that day, so excited to show Mom and Dad. Emma had just started preschool. She'd finger painted a picture, a blob of red and blue that might have been anything. Mom had it framed. It hung in the kitchen, pride of place. My certificate ended up in a drawer somewhere. When I was 8, I auditioned for the school play and got the lead role. I practiced my lines every night in my room, whisper shouting so I wouldn't disturb Emma's bedtime. Opening night, I stood backstage in my costume, peering through the curtains at the audience, searching for my parents' faces. They weren't there. Emma had a soccer game that ran late, Mom explained later. They couldn't make both. Emma was younger, needed them more. I would understand, wouldn't I? I said I understood. I was becoming very good at understanding. When I was 10, I started cooking dinner for myself. Mom was always too busy with Emma's homework, Emma's activities, Emma's friends. I taught myself from YouTube videos, nothing fancy, just basics. Pasta, scrambled eggs, sandwiches that were slightly more elaborate than PB&J. "You're so independent, Lily," Mom said in a tone that suggested this was a compliment. "So self-sufficient." I was 10 years old and self-sufficient meant lonely. The pattern continued through middle school. Emma joined the dance team, I joined the band. Emma's recitals filled the family calendar. My concerts were attended by Mrs. Chen, the librarian who'd become my unofficial cheerleader, showing up even though she had no obligation to do so. In 8th grade, I won a district-wide science fair with a project on water purification. The prize was a scholarship to a prestigious summer STEM camp. I was so proud. I'd worked on that project for months, staying late at school to use the lab equipment because we didn't have space for it at home. Emma's room had been expanded into what used to be the guest room, and my room had been shrunk to accommodate a shared bathroom. "That's nice, honey," Dad said when I told him about the scholarship. He didn't look up from his phone. He was texting someone about Emma's upcoming dance competition in Seattle. They were planning to make it a family trip. 3 days, staying at a nice hotel downtown. "Can I come?" I asked. "To Seattle? Lily, it's Emma's competition. You'd be bored." "I could explore the city, visit the Space Needle, Pike Place Market." "We won't have time for tourist stuff. It's all about supporting Emma." "I always support Emma. When do you support me?" The words came out before I could stop them. Dad finally looked up from his phone, his expression more surprised than anything else, as if a lamp had suddenly started speaking. "That's not fair, Lily. We support you." "When? Name one time in the last year you came to something of mine." "We're busy. You know that. Emma needs." "What about what I need?" You're older. You're more independent. Emma's still. Emma's 14 now, Dad. She's not a baby. When does it become about me? He sighed, the way you'd sigh at an inconvenience, a traffic jam, or a long line at the store. Lily, don't be dramatic. We love you. We're just stretched thin right now. They went to Seattle without me. I went to my STEM camp, which I paid for myself using money I'd earned from babysitting. I loved it. For 2 weeks, I was surrounded by people who cared about science and discovery, who thought my ideas were interesting, who remembered my name. When I came home, tan and happy and full of stories, no one asked about it. Emma's competition photos had already been printed and framed. High school was more of the same, but worse. Emma entered high school the same year I started my junior year, and suddenly we were in the same building. You'd think that would bring us closer. Instead, it highlighted exactly how different our experiences were. Emma was popular immediately. She joined the cheer squad, made friends with the senior girls, got invited to parties. Boys asked her out. Teachers loved her. She was bright and bubbly and everything I wasn't. I was a ghost. I floated through the hallways, invisible to everyone except my small group of fellow band geeks and academic overachievers. I had friends, Priya and Marcus and Zoe, but they weren't the kind of friends who got invited to parties or featured on social media. We were the kids who ate lunch in the library and considered a wild Friday night to be a Marvel movie marathon. At home, the contrast was even starker. Emma's achievements, no matter how small, were celebrated. She got a B+ on a history test, fridge-worthy. I got straight A's, expected, barely acknowledged. She scored a goal in soccer. Dad took her out for ice cream. I made first chair in the state band. That's nice, Lily. The money disparity was obvious, too. Emma got a new iPhone every year. I had a Batway, 3-year-old model I'd bought myself with babysitting money. Emma's closet was full of name-brand clothes. I wore thrift store find, fashions, and hand-me-downs from cousins. Emma got a car for her 16th birthday, a used but nice Honda Civic. For my 16th birthday, I got a card with $20 in it and a generic cake from the grocery store. We can't afford 2 cars, Mom explained. Emma needs one for all her activities. I had activities too. I had band practice and debate team and my part-time job at the library. But I took the bus, or I walked, or I got rides from Mrs. Chen, who'd gone from being my librarian to being something closer to a fairy godmother. Mrs. Chen noticed things. She noticed when I came to school with the same lunch every day, a peanut butter sandwich and an apple, because that's what I could afford on my own. She started accidentally making too much food and bringing me containers of homemade Chinese food. She noticed when I wore the same winter coat for 3 years straight, even as I shot up 4 inches. A donated coat appeared in the library's lost and found, perfectly my size, tag still on. Someone must have left this last year and never claimed it, she said, her eyes twinkling. Shame to let it go to waste. I wanted to hug her. I wanted to cry. Instead, I thanked her quietly and wore that coat every day, grateful for its warmth and for the reminder that someone, somewhere saw me. But Mrs. Chen couldn't fix what was broken at home. No one could. The Christmas before, the one that led to this frozen night on my porch, had been bad too, but I'd explained it away. We were traveling to see Grandma Joan, Mom had said when I pointed out that my stocking had only candy in it while Emma's overflowed with gifts. We couldn't fit everything in the car. We'll get you something later. Later never came. For my 17th birthday in March, they forgot completely. Not the way you forget and remember later with embarrassment. They forgot, and when I reminded them 3 days later, Mom said, "Oh, Lily, I'm so sorry. We've been so busy with Emma's college preparations." Emma wasn't even a junior yet. She wouldn't apply to college for another year and a half. In May, Emma got asked to prom by Tyler Chen, the quarterback, and coincidentally, Ms. Chen's nephew. I'd introduced them at a library event. He'd fallen for Emma immediately. That was my contribution to my sister's happiness. I was a matchmaker for a girl who'd never once asked me about my own interests. Mom spent $600 on Emma's prom dress. They had photos taken by a professional photographer. They rented a limo for Emma and her friends. It was a whole production. 2 weeks later, I had my junior prom. I went with Marcus as friends, both of us acknowledging that we were going more for the experience than any romantic reasons. I bought a dress from a consignment shop for $35. It was pretty, a deep blue that matched my eyes, but it wasn't $600 pretty. Mom didn't offer to take photos. Dad didn't ask about my evening. When I came home at midnight, laughing because Marcus and I had ditched the dance early to get burgers and see a late movie, the house was dark. They'd all gone to bed. The next morning, Mom asked Emma 1,000 questions about her prom night. She didn't ask me a single one. That summer, Emma went to a prestigious dance intensive in New York City. 6 weeks, all expenses paid, by my parents. The program cost $8,000. They found the money. I asked if I could do a summer engineering program at the local university. It cost $1,200. Mom said they couldn't afford it. I worked extra shifts at the library and paid for it myself. September came, senior year started. I was taking 5 AP classes, working 20 hours a week at the library, and applying to colleges, good colleges, schools where I might get scholarships, where I might build a real future. I was so tired all the time. I fell asleep over my textbooks. I survived on coffee and determination. Emma was taking 2 honors classes and complaining about how hard they were. Mom hired a tutor for her. In October, I won a regional writing competition. The prize was $500 and publication in a literary journal. I was so proud. Writing was my secret passion, the thing I did late at night when I was supposed to be sleeping, pouring all my loneliness and longing into stories about girls who were seen, who were loved, who mattered. I showed the notification email to Mom. She was scrolling through her phone, looking at pictures Emma had texted her from a friend's house. Oh, that's good, Lily, very good. She didn't read the story. She didn't ask what it was about. She didn't come to the small awards ceremony the following week, even though I'd circled the date on the family calendar 3 times. Mrs. Chen came. She brought flowers and told me I was brilliant and that my writing had made her cry in the best way. We got coffee afterward, and she told me about her own daughter who lived in California and worked as a software engineer. She's a lot like you, Miss Chen said, independent, resilient, had to fight for everything. Did her parents forget about her too? I asked, trying to make it sound like a joke. Mrs. Chen's expression turned serious. Lily, what's happening at your home? It's not okay. You know that, right? I did know, but knowing it and being able to do anything about it were different things. I was 17. I had 1 more year until I could leave for college, and then I'd be free. I just had to survive until then. But surviving was getting harder. In November, Emma announced she wanted to have a big Sweet 16 party. Never mind that she was only 15. She wanted to plan ahead. Mom was thrilled. They started booking venues, interviewing DJs, creating Pinterest boards. The party was scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day. It was also the same weekend as the regional debate championship, where I was competing. I'd qualified for the first time ever. It was a huge deal. You'll have to miss the party, Mom said when I pointed out the conflict. What? Mom, it's my championship. And it's Emma's Sweet 16? She only turned 16 once. I only compete in regionals once. Lily, don't be selfish. Emma needs her family there. What about me? Don't I get to need my family? That's different. You're older, you understand. I didn't understand. I would never understand. I went to my debate championship. I came in 3rd place out of 40 schools. It was the best I'd ever done. I called home from the bus, riding high on adrenaline and pride. That's wonderful, honey, Mom said, distracted. I have to go. We're setting up for Emma's party. They threw Emma a party that cost $5,000. 200 people came. It was in every photo on social media. Emma in a designer dress, surrounded by friends, a professional DJ, a candy bar, a photo booth, everything a teenage girl could want. My 3rd place trophy sat on my dresser. No one ever asked to see it. December arrived, the Christmas season that would change everything. By now, the pattern was so established, so normalized that I operated on autopilot. I bought Emma her present, the art supplies, bought small gifts for my parents, a tie for dad, a candle for mom, and didn't expect much in return. I'd learned not to expect, but I didn't expect to be erased entirely. I didn't expect to literally be locked out of my own home. I didn't expect to stand in the freezing cold, watching through the window as my family celebrated Christmas without me, as if I'd never existed at all. I walked for 2 hours that night. The temperature dropped to 23 degrees. My phone died somewhere around mile 3. My feet were numb. My face ached from the cold, but I kept walking because the alternative was going back, knocking on that door and begging them to remember I existed. I'd rather freeze. Eventually, I ended up at the library. It was closed, obviously. It was almost 10 o'clock on December 23rd. But there was a small alcove by the front entrance where the building's heat vents created a slightly warmer pocket. I huddled there, my backpack as a pillow, and closed my eyes. I must have fallen asleep because I woke to someone shaking my shoulder. Lily, Lily, wake up! Oh my God, you're freezing! Mrs. Chen. Of course it was Mrs. Chen. She'd come to return some books through the night drop and found me. She didn't ask questions. She just wrapped her own coat around me, guided me to her car, and drove me to her house. She ran a hot bath, gave me warm clothes, made me soup and tea, and sat with me while I cried so hard I thought I might break apart. Tell me everything, she said. So I did, all of it. The years of neglect, the favoritism, the erasure, the matching pajamas and the 5 stockings and the door that wouldn't open. I told her about the forgotten birthdays and the unattended concerts and the 1,000 small ways my family had communicated that I was less than, worth less, deserving of less. When I finished, Mrs. Chen was quiet for a long time. Then she picked up her phone. I'm calling someone, she said. Someone who needs to know about this. Who? Your father's father, Harrison Montgomery. I stared at her. I don't have a grandfather. My grandparents are all... Your father told you they're dead. They're not. Harrison Montgomery is alive, and he's been trying to find you for 17 years. The world tilted. What? Mrs. Chen pulled up something on her phone, a Facebook profile. An old man with white hair and kind eyes, Harrison Montgomery, living in Portland, Oregon. Your father's parents were wealthy, very wealthy. When your father married your mother, they disapproved. They thought she was a gold digger, which, frankly, they weren't wrong about. Your parents eloped, and your father cut contact with his family. Harrison tried for years to reconnect, especially after you were born. He wanted to meet his granddaughter. But your father refused, changed his number, moved without leaving a forwarding address. How do you know this? Because Harrison hired investigators. Because 3 years ago, one of those investigators tracked your family to this town and came to the library asking questions. Because I've been Harrison's eyes and ears ever since, sending him photos from school events, updating him on your achievements, waiting for the right moment to intervene. I couldn't breathe. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting you, watching over you, making sure that when the time came when you needed help, I could connect you to someone who actually loves you, someone who's been waiting for years to be part of your life. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were a child. Because your father has legal custody. Because Harrison wanted to do this the right way, not kidnap you or cause a legal battle that would hurt you. But now, she gestured to me, to my frozen clothes in a pile by the door, to the evidence of neglect written all over my face. Now you're 17, old enough to choose. And what happened tonight is grounds for a serious conversation about your welfare. I looked at the profile picture again. Harrison Montgomery, my grandfather. A man who'd been searching for me, who'd sent an investigator, who'd been receiving updates about my life while my actual family forgot I existed. Does he want to meet me? Mrs. Chen smiled, tears in her eyes. Lily, he's wanted nothing more for 17 years. Can I call him? I nodded. She dialed. It rang twice. Sarah, is everything all right? It's nearly 11. His voice was deep, warm, concerned. Harrison, it's Sarah Chen. I have someone here who needs to talk to you, someone who's ready to meet you. A pause, a sharp intake of breath. Lily? Hi, I whispered, my voice cracking. Hi, Grandpa. And then I heard something I'd never heard from anyone in my family. I heard him cry. Not sad crying, but the overwhelming kind, the kind that comes when something you've wanted desperately for years finally happens. Oh, sweetheart. Oh, Lily, I've been waiting so long. Tell me where you are. Tell me you're safe. I'm safe. I'm with Mrs. Chen, but I can't go home. They locked me out. They forgot me at Christmas. Then you'll come here. To me. I'll send a plane tomorrow. No, tonight. I'll send it tonight. You'll spend Christmas with me, and every Christmas after, if you'll have me. You'll never be forgotten again. Never. Do you hear me? I was crying again, but this time it felt different. Lighter, like relief. I hear you. Good. Put Sarah back on. We're going to fix this, Lily. All of it, I promise you. I handed the phone back to Mrs. Chen. She spoke in low tones while I sat there, processing. I had a grandfather who'd been looking for me, a grandfather who was sending a plane, a grandfather who remembered I existed. Mrs. Chen hung up. He's making arrangements now. There's a private airfield about an hour from here. A plane will arrive at 6 a.m. to take you to Portland. Pack whatever you need tonight. Tomorrow, you start your new life. What about school? What about Harrison will handle everything. He has lawyers, good ones. You're 17, old enough to choose where you live. And after what happened tonight, no judge will force you back to a home where you were locked out in freezing weather. What if your parents just demonstrated they don't care? They chose this, Lily. Now you get to choose too. I thought about my room, about the few possessions that mattered to me. My books, my laptop, the trophy from debate championships. Not much, really. My whole life fit in a backpack and a few boxes. Okay, I said. Okay, I'll go. Mrs. Chen drove me back to my house at midnight. The lights were off now, everyone asleep. She kept the car running while I used my key to let myself in the back door. They'd never changed the locks because they'd never thought I was worth the security risk. I moved through the dark house like a thief, packing quietly. Clothes, books, laptop, documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport. I'd learned to keep important things in my room after Mom had lost my documents twice. I took the few photos I had of myself as a child, back when they'd still taken pictures of me. I took my award certificates and my writing journal. I took nothing that belonged to them. In the kitchen, I left Emma's present on the counter with a note. Merry Christmas, Emma. I hope you enjoy the art supplies. I used my meal money to buy them for you. I hope one day you'll realize what that means. For my parents, I left nothing. No note, no explanation, no goodbye. They'd communicated their feelings clearly through their actions. I was just responding in kind. At 1:30 a.m., Mrs. Chen and I left. My former home disappeared in the rearview mirror, and I felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, no longing, just a cold, clean break. We spent the night at her house. I slept better than I had in years. At 5:00 a.m., we drove to the airfield. At 6:15 a.m., I boarded a private plane for the first time in my life. At 8:30 a.m., I landed in Portland, and at 9:00 a.m., I met Harrison Montgomery, my grandfather, who was standing at the bottom of the plane stairs with tears streaming down his face and his arms held wide. "Lily," he said, "my Lily, welcome home." I walked into his embrace, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. That first Christmas with Grandpa Harrison was everything a Christmas should be. His house, a beautiful craftsman-style home overlooking the city, was decorated traditionally but warmly. A real tree that smelled like pine forests, handmade ornaments collected over decades, stockings knitted by my grandmother before she passed away, and one new stocking hanging right next to Grandpa's with my name embroidered in gold thread. "I had it made yesterday," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been waiting 17 years to hang a stocking for you." Christmas Eve, we baked cookies together. He taught me his mother's recipe for snickerdoodles, telling me stories about his childhood, about my father as a little boy before something went wrong. before greed and pride had twisted him into someone unrecognizable. Your father used to be different, Grandpa Harrison said sadly. Bright, kind, but when he met your mother, she saw dollar signs, and he saw someone who told him what he wanted to hear. They fed each other's worst impulses. My wife, your grandmother, Alice, she saw it immediately. She tried to warn him. He accused us of being controlling, of not wanting him to be happy. We gave him an ultimatum: sign a prenup or lose access to the family money. He chose your mother and cut us off. Why didn't you fight harder? We tried. We hired lawyers. We sent letters, but your father was an adult and he made his choice. When you were born, though, his eyes glistened. When we found out we had a granddaughter, Alice and I tried everything. We showed up at the hospital. Security turned us away. We sent gifts. They were returned unopened. We tried for years, Lily, years. And then Alice got sick. Cancer. She made me promise before she died that I wouldn't give up on you, that I'd keep looking. So I did. I hired investigators, and finally, 3 years ago, we found you. Why didn't you take me then? Because you were 14. Because legally, your father still had rights. Because I wanted to do it properly, build a case, make sure that when I brought you into my life, it would be permanent and legal and right. Sarah, Mrs. Chen, she agreed to be my eyes in your life. She sent me photos, told me about your achievements. I've been following you, so proud of you, waiting for the moment when you'd need me and I could step in. I needed you for years. I know. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We stayed up late that night talking. He told me about the family I'd never known, about Grandma Alice, who'd been an artist and would have loved my writing, about the Montgomery family history going back generations, about the trust fund that had been set up in my name when I was born, gathering interest for 17 years. You're a wealthy young woman, Lily. You always have been. Your father just made sure you never knew it. Christmas morning, I woke to a house that smelled like cinnamon rolls and coffee. Grandpa Harrison was already up, sitting by the tree with a cup of coffee and a smile. Merry Christmas, sweetheart. We opened presents slowly, savoring each one. He'd gotten me books, first editions of classics, beautiful leather-bound volumes, art supplies for the drawing I'd mentioned loving as a child, a new laptop for college applications, warm clothes that actually fit, and one small box, the last one, wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a locket. Inside the locket were 2 photos, one of Grandma Alice holding a baby, me apparently taken at the hospital before they were kicked out, and one of Grandpa Harrison, recent, smiling. So I'm always with you, he said. I cried. I couldn't help it. These were the first real presents I'd received in years, chosen with thought and love and attention. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for letting me be your grandfather. That day, we video called Mrs. Chen and her family in California. Her daughter Rebecca was exactly like me, smart, driven, a little awkward. We bonded immediately over our shared love of science fiction and bad puns. You two are going to be trouble together, Mrs. Chen said, but she was smiling. Good trouble, Rebecca corrected. For the first time in years, I felt the future opening up before me, full of possibility. The legal proceedings started immediately after Christmas. Grandpa Harrison's lawyers were excellent, thorough, and ruthless. They built a case around years of neglect, the forgotten events, the financial disparity, the emotional abuse, and finally, the incident on December 23rd when I'd been locked out in freezing weather. My parents tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, that they'd thought I was staying at a friend's house, that they'd never received my texts. The lawyers pulled phone records proving otherwise. They had Ms. Chen's testimony about years of neglect. They had my school records showing I'd paid for my own programs and supplies. They had bank records showing the massive amount spent on Emma versus the nothing spent on me. The judge was not impressed. In early January, I was legally emancipated and granted the right to live with my grandfather. My parents were also ordered to pay restitution, back payment for all the things they should have provided but didn't, calculated at 17 years of inadequate support. The amount was substantial. It nearly bankrupted them. I didn't feel bad. What I did feel was free. For the first time in my life, I could focus on myself, on my future, without constantly managing around my family's neglect. I enrolled in a new school in Portland for spring semester, a prestigious private school where I immediately joined the debate team and the literary magazine. I made real friends, people who liked me for me, who were interested in my ideas and my stories. I finished my college applications with Grandpa Harrison's support. I applied to 15 schools, all of them excellent, all of them offering programs in creative writing or engineering or both. I wrote my personal essay about resilience, about surviving, about finding family in unexpected places. In March, the acceptance letters started arriving. Stanford, MIT, Yale, Columbia, every single school accepted me. Several offered full-ride scholarships. Not because I needed the money anymore. Grandpa Harrison had made it clear he'd pay for whatever I needed, but because they wanted me, my achievements, my voice. I chose Columbia. New York City felt like the right kind of fresh start, far from Oregon, far from my old life, big enough to get lost in, exciting enough to build a new identity. But before I left for college, there was something I needed to do. In April, Emma's Sweet 17 party was scheduled. Another lavish affair, another few $1,000s my parents somehow found despite the restitution payments. Apparently, they'd taken out a second mortgage. I didn't go to the party, obviously, but I did send a gift. It was a scrapbook. A beautiful leather-bound scrapbook, the kind Emma would love. Inside, I'd carefully documented 17 years of family memories. Photos, ticket stubs, certificates, social media posts. But I'd edited them carefully, deliberately. Every single photo of me was blacked out. Every achievement of mine was highlighted with a single word in red marker: forgotten. The first page had a photo from a Christmas years ago. 5-year-old me and baby Emma by the tree. My face was crossed out. The caption I'd added read, "They took this photo, then never printed it." Emma's photos filled albums. Mine were deleted. Page after page documented the disparity. Emma's birthday parties versus my forgotten birthdays. Emma's recitals versus my unattended concerts. Emma's new iPhone versus my thrift store clothes. Emma's car versus my bus passes. The last page was December 23rd last year. I'd included a screenshot of Emma's Instagram post. Perfect family Christmas with my favorite people, with a photo of the 5 matching pajamas. Below it, I'd written, 5 stockings, 5 pajamas, 5 people. You erased me and then celebrated yourselves for being a perfect family, but a family that forgets one of their own was never perfect. It was just cruel. I hope you think of me every Christmas. I hope you remember the daughter and sister you threw away. Because while you forgot me, I was found by someone who actually knew what love looked like. I have a real family now. I have a grandfather who flies across the country to see me. I have friends who care. I have a future. What do you have? Each other, I suppose. I hope you're happy together. I hope it was worth it. Goodbye, Lily. P.S. Emma. I hope you enjoyed the art supplies. That was $65. I didn't eat lunch for 2 weeks to afford. I hope you think of that every time you use them. I mailed it to arrive the morning of the party. Mrs. Chen told me later what happened. Emma opened it in front of all her friends. She started crying, not sad crying, but the kind of crying that comes from shame finally catching up to you. She'd realized, perhaps for the first time, what they'd done. Mom tried to hide the scrapbook, but Emma's friends had already seen it. The story spread. The photos went viral on social media, not because I posted them, I hadn't, but because one of Emma's friends, horrified by what she'd seen, shared them with a caption about the cruelest thing I've ever witnessed. By the end of Emma's party, #justice4Lily was trending locally. My parents were publicly shamed. Friends stopped calling. Grandma Joan, when she found out what had really happened, disowned them. Dad's coworkers started looking at him differently. Someone even reported them to child services for the locked-out incident. It didn't go anywhere legally since I was already emancipated, but the investigation was humiliating for them. Emma's reputation suffered too. She went from popular to pitied to avoided. People saw her as the girl who'd benefited from her sister's abuse, even if she hadn't asked for it. It wasn't entirely fair. Emma had been a child too, and you can't blame a kid for their parents' choices, but life isn't fair. I'd learned that lesson early. She was learning it now. I didn't feel guilty about any of it. They'd made their choices. I'd simply documented them. College was everything I'd hoped it would be. At Columbia, I was just Lily, not the forgotten daughter or the neglected sister, just me. I took creative writing workshops and engineering courses. I joined the school newspaper. I made friends who became chosen family. Isabella, who was studying biochemistry and made the best late-night ramen. Marcus, yes, the same Marcus from high school who'd also chosen Columbia, who was majoring in computer science and made me laugh until I cried. And Jasmine, a theater major who'd drag us to off-Broadway shows and taught us about storytelling through performance. Grandpa Harrison visited once a month. We'd have dinner at his favorite restaurant in Manhattan, and he'd ask about my classes, my friends, my writing. He actually read my stories and gave thoughtful feedback. He came to my debate tournaments. He was there for every moment that mattered, and even some that didn't particularly matter, but that he wanted to be part of anyway. "I'm making up for lost time," he'd say. "You don't have to." I want to. Sophomore year, my short story won a major national college writing competition. The prize was $10,000 and publication in the New Yorker. When I called Grandpa Harrison to tell him, he cried. "Alice would be so proud," he said. "I'm so proud." The story was about a girl who was invisible to her family but found herself through writing. It was autobiographical, barely disguised. When it published, it went viral. Not because of my past, I'd used a pen name, but because it resonated with thousands of people who'd felt invisible in their own lives. I got letters from readers, hundreds of them. People who'd been forgotten, overlooked, cast aside by those who should have loved them. People who'd found their own Grandpa Harrisons, their own Mrs. Chens, their own chosen families. People who'd survived. I wrote back to every single one. Junior year, a literary agent reached out. She'd read my story in the New Yorker and wanted to know if I had a novel. I did. I'd been working on one for 2 years, a story about found family and resilience and the power of being seen. She loved it. 6 publishers bid on it in an auction. My book sold for 6 figures. I was 20 years old and I was going to be a published novelist. The book came out the winter of my senior year, right before Christmas. It debuted at number 3 on the New York Times bestseller list. The reviews called it devastating and hopeful and a story of survival and triumph. On the acknowledgments page, I wrote, "To Grandpa Harrison, who never stopped looking for me, to Mrs. Chen, who watched over me until I could be found, to the friends who chose me when family didn't. You are the reason I'm here. You are the reason I survived. And to every person who's ever felt invisible, you matter. You are seen. You are worth more than their neglect. Keep going." I didn't mention my parents or Emma at all. They didn't deserve the space on the page. Every Christmas for those 10 years, I spent the holiday with Grandpa Harrison. We built traditions, baking snickerdoodles on Christmas Eve, watching It's a Wonderful Life on Christmas morning, taking a walk through the snow-covered city in the afternoon. We invited Mrs. Chen and her family. We welcomed my Columbia friends who couldn't travel home for the holidays. Our Christmases were full of laughter and love, and people who chose to be there, who wanted to be there, who remembered each other existed. Meanwhile, my parents' Christmases grew smaller. Grandma Joan never visited again. Extended family members, once they learned the truth, kept their distance. It was just the 3 of them, Mom, Dad, and Emma, in that house with too many rooms and too many ghosts. I know this because Emma reached out to me in my 3rd year of college. She sent a long email apologizing for everything. She explained that she'd been young, that she hadn't understood, that she was in therapy now dealing with the guilt. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she wrote. "I just want you to know I'm sorry. And I'm trying to be better. I'm not taking their money anymore. I'm working my own job. I'm at community college because they can't afford the schools I got into, and I'm okay with that. I deserve that. I'm trying to understand what it was like for you. I'll probably never fully understand, but I'm trying. If you never want to talk to me again, I understand. But if you ever want to, I'm here. I'll always be here now. I won't forget again. Your sister, Emma." I read the email 3 times. I felt complicated. Angry still, yes. Hurt, absolutely. But also maybe a tiny bit of something softer. Emma had been a child too. She'd benefited from a system she didn't create, but she was working to understand that now. I didn't respond right away. I needed time. But I did save the email, filed away in a folder labeled "Maybe Someday." My parents never reached out. Not once in 10 years. No apology, no acknowledgement, no attempt at reconciliation. And honestly, I was fine with that. Some bridges are meant to burn. Year 10, Christmas 2034. I was 27 years old. My novel had spawned 3 sequels, all bestsellers. I'd graduated from Columbia with honors. I'd gotten my master's degree in creative writing from Iowa. I was now teaching writing workshops and working on my 5th book. I'd built a life I loved, surrounded by people who loved me back. Grandpa Harrison was 85 now, still sharp as ever, but moving a bit slower. We'd started a new tradition. Every Christmas, we invited people who had nowhere else to go. Students far from home, elderly neighbors without family, anyone who needed a place to belong for the holidays. This Christmas, we had 15 people in the house. The dining table had to be extended with card tables at both ends. It was loud and chaotic and perfect. Among the guests was Rebecca Chen. Miss Chen had passed 2 years earlier from a stroke, and Rebecca and I had grown even closer in our grief. Also, there was Marcus, now my boyfriend of 3 years, who'd proposed 2 weeks earlier with a ring he'd been designing for 6 months. And there was Emma. Yes, Emma. After 5 years of occasional emails that gradually became phone calls that eventually became careful coffee meetups, we'd rebuilt something. Not the sister relationship we never had, but something new. A friendship built on honesty and growth and hard work. She'd proven over and over that she'd changed, that she understood, that she was truly sorry. She'd cut contact with our parents 3 years ago after they'd demanded she choose between them and me. She'd chosen me. It couldn't erase the past, but it meant something for the future. Our parents had not taken this well. From what Emma told me, they were furious, insisting that I'd poisoned her against them, that I was vindictive and cruel. They'd threatened to disown her. "You've already disowned the only person who needed you," Emma had told them. "Now you're just alone." This Christmas Eve, as we all sat around the living room after dinner, full and content, Grandpa Harrison asked us to go around and share what we were grateful for. When it came to me, I looked around the room at Grandpa Harrison with his kind eyes and patient love, at Marcus with his terrible puns and steady support, at Rebecca with her brilliance and fierce loyalty, at Emma who'd worked so hard to become someone worthy of forgiveness, at all these people who'd chosen to be here, who'd chosen me. "I'm grateful," I said, for every person in this room, for every choice that led me here. And I'm grateful for the family that forgot me because it led me to the family that remembered." Everyone raised their glasses. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed or headed home, I stood by the window looking out at the snow. So different from that night 10 years ago when I'd stood outside a different house, locked out in the cold, watching a family that didn't want me. My phone buzzed, an Instagram notification. Emma's post, a photo of our whole group gathered around the tree, everyone laughing. The caption, "Year 10 of the best Christmases of my life. Grateful for second chances and the sister who gave me one. Christmas with Lily Mashaj. Chosen family." I smiled and was about to put my phone away when I saw it, a comment from an account I didn't recognize. But I recognized the names, Sarah and David Montgomery. My parents. They'd found Emma's post. They'd seen the photos of our celebrations, year after year. They'd watched from the outside as I built a life without them, as Emma eventually joined me, as we created something they could never be part of. The comment read, "That should be us." I stared at it for a long moment, then I blocked the account. They were right, it should have been them. They'd had 17 years to be my family. They'd chosen not to. They'd had 10 years to apologize. They'd chosen not to. Now they got to live with that choice. They got to spend every Christmas knowing they could have been at that table, in those photos, part of that love. But they'd thrown it away for nothing, and now it was too late. I turned away from my phone and looked around the living room. Grandpa Harrison had dozed off in his armchair, a contented smile on his face. Through the walls, I could hear Marcus humming while he loaded the dishwasher. Outside, snow was falling softly, turning the world clean and white. I thought about that girl who'd stood in the cold 10 years ago, broken and freezing and convinced she was worthless because the people who should have loved her didn't. I wanted to tell her, "You're going to make it. You're going to find people who see you, who choose you, who remember you, exist not just at Christmas, but every single day. You're going to write stories that change lives. You're going to love and be loved. You're going to be so much more than they made you feel. You're going to be happy. And most importantly, you're going to realize that their failure to love you was never about your worth. It was about their capacity. You were always deserving. You were always enough. You were always worth remembering. Christmas morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee and snickerdoodles. Grandpa Harrison was already up, sitting by the tree, my stocking hanging right next to his like it had for 10 years, like it would for every year to come. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," he said. "Merry Christmas, Grandpa." I sat down next to him and he handed me a small box. Inside was a key. "What's this?" "The house key. This is your home, Lily. It always has been. From the moment you walked through that door 10 years ago. When I'm gone, it's yours. Everything I have is yours because you're my granddaughter and I love you, and I will never, ever forget that." I hugged him, crying into his shoulder like I was 17 again. "Thank you," I whispered, "for finding me, for saving me, for remembering." "Thank you," he said back, for letting yourself be found, for surviving, for becoming this incredible woman. Your grandmother and I always knew you'd be special. We just knew it." Later that day, after presents were opened and breakfast was eaten and Marcus had made everyone laugh with his dramatic reading of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," I posted a photo to Instagram. Just one, our whole group by the tree, all of us smiling, all of us there by choice. The caption was simple. Year 10, they forgot my existence at Christmas. I spent the next 10 with a family who remembered. Best decision I ever made. Christmas with love, chosen, family. Never forgotten. It got thousands of likes, hundreds of comments from people sharing their own stories of found family, and one comment that mattered more than all the others from Emma. "Thank you for teaching me what family really means. I love you. I loved her too. Not in the way I'd imagined loving a sister when I was young. Not with that uncomplicated, automatic affection, but in a harder, more earned way. A love built on acknowledgement and change and choice." As the day wound down and guests started heading home, I stood at the window one more time, looking out at the snow. But this time, I wasn't on the outside looking in. I was warm, surrounded by love, part of something real. 10 years ago, they'd locked me out. Tonight, I'd locked myself in, into a life of my own making, into a family of my choosing, into a future where I would never, ever be forgotten again. And that, I realized, was the greatest revenge of all. Not the public shame or the lost relationships or the financial consequences. The greatest revenge was my happiness, my success, my chosen family, my full, rich, beautiful life. They'd tried to erase me. Instead, I'd become indelible. I pulled out my phone and started writing. My next book was already taking shape in my mind. Another story about survival, about resilience, about the families we find when the families we're born into fail us. But this time, it would end not with survival, but with triumph. Not with escape, but with celebration. Not with loss, but with love, because that's the truth they never learned. You can forget someone all you want, but if they're strong enough, they'll find people who remember. And then they'll build something so bright, so warm, so full of love that your forgetting becomes irrelevant. They forgot my existence at Christmas. And I spent the next 10 years being so unforgettable that their forgetting became the only thing anyone remembered about them. That felt like justice. That felt like peace. That felt like victory. Merry Christmas to everyone who's ever been forgotten. May you find your people. May you build your warmth. May you choose and be chosen. May you be remembered. And may you thrive so beautifully that their neglect becomes the footnote to your triumph, not the definition of your worth. You are seen. You are valued. You are remembered always.